Greetings and welcome back to 50 Shades of Beige. Today we're having a look at one of the first AM4 CPUs, a long forgotten member of the AM4 family, the Athlon X4 970. In case you missed it, my last video was on socket AM4 versus LGA 2011 in a budget gaming showdown. And some of those comments kind of inspired me to have a look at what the cheapest way would be to get into socket AM4. And as you can see, you can pick up these Athlon X4 970 CPUs for a reasonable price, anywhere between $5 and $20, depending on how fast you want it and that sort of thing. This is the listing I bought from here. They do claim to be new, and it did come sealed in a CPU caddy, so I believe that they're new. These are $875 plus $396 shipping based on where I live. So yeah, not a bad deal at all. And today I just want to take a look and see if these things are actually worth buying or if they're just garbage, especially considering their architecture. So we got a base frequency of 3.8 gigahertz with a boost clock of 4 gigahertz. And speaking of boost clocks, these CPUs are not capable of precision boost overdrive. There's a total of 4 cores and 4 threads with no integrated graphics. And these are Bristol Ridge cores from the Excavator CPU family. And I apologize in advance, I keep saying Raven Ridge. If I say Raven Ridge, I know I'm wrong. It's Bristol Ridge. I'm aware it's Bristol Ridge. I just have Raven Ridge on the mind. Now, these cores were originally featured in 2016 with the AMD A-series CPUs, and those CPUs mostly came with integrated graphics. So I'd be willing to bet that our Athlon X4 970 is essentially an A12-9800 with a dead iGPU. Now here's where things get a little more hairy for our pals over at AMD. First off, there are only 8 PCIe Gen 3 lanes for this CPU, which is like a stupidly limited amount of connectivity. Moreover, the cores are grouped into function modules of 2 cores each, and each function module gets 96 kilobytes of instruction cache and a 1 megabyte L2 cache. That is it. And that's in comparison to Intel's Kaby Lake i5, which had a 6 megabyte L3 cache. And we're going to see here shortly why that's so important. Also, we're going to try out a CPU cooler I've been holding off. I picked this up on AliExpress. It is super overbuilt for what we're doing, and I'm interested to see how well it does. So we'll check that out as well. Pull this absolute chungus out of the box here. I don't really see the point in having 3 fans. At some point, you're just going to have diminishing returns, but we're going to give this a shot anyway. These are supposedly RGB fans, but I don't see an RGB connector anywhere, which tells me these are literally red, green, and blue fans. And we have ourselves a total of 6 direct contact heat pipes going into 2 80mm fin stacks cooled by 3 80mm voltage regulated fans. These are just kind of El Cheapo fans. I don't expect much out of them. One other item of note is the mounting system. This only comes with the stock lever mounting system. So if you don't like that spring-loaded lever mount system, don't buy this cooler. However, I only paid like $14 for this thing, so I'm really kind of interested to see how it performs. It should be more than enough for our X4 970.
A few moments later.
Alright, so I can hear you saying already, well, what the heck happened here? And this is something that I like to mention every time I work with any of the older AM4 stuff especially, and that's that just because the socket is compatible doesn't necessarily mean that the CPU is compatible. So in this case, with our Athlon X4, we actually have to get an A320 chipset, and we have to get one ideally that's brand new, because it's really hard in some cases to roll the BIOS back on some of these older motherboards. But we have here the Asus Prime A320M-K. It's an entirely unremarkable motherboard, but I think it'll do just fine for our CPU here. Let's go ahead and grab some RAM and a few other things and get this thing built, and then see how the CPU does. I noticed when I first booted this machine up with the X4 CPU in it, that it was still like blowing the CPU fans at full bore and nothing was happening. So I decided to take a closer look at the box. And although this is an A320 motherboard, you'll see it has Ryzen 3000 desktop ready, Ryzen 2000 desktop ready, Windows 11 ready, all that stuff on it. Those are, especially the Windows 11 stickers, like something they add after the fact. And I decided to have a look at the sticker on the front of the box. This was actually manufactured in September 2023, which I didn't even realize they were still making A320M motherboards all the way up to 2023. And so this definitely has a newer BIOS that is not going to support our CPU. So what I did is I went ahead and pulled out my trusty Athlon 3000G. If you don't have one of these and you're an AM4 enthusiast, I highly recommend you get one. But this little guy is compatible with like 99% of AM4 motherboards right out of the box. Because especially when you're looking at like cheaper motherboards, they usually don't support what they call BIOS flashback. So in this case, I went ahead and popped our Athlon 3000G in here. And I'm getting ready to flash a new BIOS, an older BIOS, onto this motherboard. So I'm going to knock that out and then we can get on with our testing.
One eternity later.
So after a bunch of back and forth with Asus support here, I finally just gave up and went with a different motherboard. This is an MSI B350 Tomahawk. I actually had to go through a bunch of motherboards and check the BIOS versions. Luckily, this particular board has a BIOS that's from 2018 and still supports our Bristol Ridge CPU. Just a word of caution, even though we bought an A320 motherboard and right on the Asus website, it says that the Bristol Ridge CPUs are supported, Asus doesn't have a good way for you to roll back your BIOS. I even tried a BIOS programmer and it still didn't work. So this A320 board is basically a lost cause, and I'll just hang on to it for a fellow gamer in need. So I went ahead and pulled out 32 gigs of RAM. We've got DDR4 3200 here. The max that a Bristol Ridge CPU will support is DDR4 2400, but at least we'll have some better timings. And then I went ahead and got my RTX 3050 8GB out. I feel like that's going to give us plenty of headroom to not bottleneck this 4-core, 4-thread CPU from 2016. Here we are with a fresh install of Windows. It took almost 2 hours to install Windows and update drivers and everything like that. It took forever, but here's a look at our CPU. And we're gonna do a quick CPU-Z bench and just kind of see what kind of results we get here. Looks like we wound up with a single-threaded score of 228, multi-thread score 846.7. I'm not really sure what to say about that. Let's compare this to another 4-core, 4-thread CPU that's older. How about, here we go, i5 7600K. It ain't even close. 4 cores, 4 threads. I mean, this just goes to show you how dominant Intel was for such a long period of time. And wowzer, it's literally double the performance as measured by CPU-Z, if not even a little bit more in the multi-thread. All right, now it wouldn't be a 50 Shades of Beige video if we weren't gonna run 3D Mark. Let's go ahead and just kick things off with Time Spy and see how we do. Looks like we're at about 30 FPS on average. I would say our CPU is definitely holding us back, but unfortunately, once again, Riva Statistics Tuner not going to help us here. And in Graphics Test 2, once again, hanging out in that 25 to 30 FPS range. Really not going too great. You can't tell if you listen because the CPU fans are cranked to 11, but the fans on the RTX 3050 are barely going. And in the CPU test, this thing is just a dog, man. The poor Athlon X4 just can't take the heat. 10 FPS, and we're not even, well, we're almost done now, but we're barely getting through this test. This thing is slow, man. Look at this, 4.4 FPS. You can do it.
Yeah, baby, you can do it.
It's gonna take forever to finish this benchmark at this rate, but I wanna finish anyway. And we scored a 3848, which is, I guess, the top score because nobody's been dumb enough to pair an RTX 3058 gig with an Athlon X4. All right, that's enough benchmarking, you say. Let's go ahead and play some games. See if this old Athlon X4 can get anything done for us here. There it goes. I wanted to show you this part so you could see just how long it takes just to launch a game with this CPU, let alone play it at a decent FPS. There it goes, the temperature or the megahertz of the CPU, but we can get CPU utilization. So that will at least give us an idea of what we're working with here. I don't know why this isn't full screen. There we go. And once again, we're already frozen. Not responding. That's all right. I'll give it a minute. Oh my gosh. CPU's pegged at 100%. We're getting there. We're loading, boys. We're going to make it. The Athlon X4 will perform, or it will face the consequences. And we all know the consequences could be dire. All right, let's see how we're doing here, boys. Oh boy, oh brother. 33 FPS. We're at 1080p. Oh my gosh, you see the, look at the tachometer. Look at it jump around. Oh my goodness, that's bad. CPU utilization is literally pegged at 100. Oh, I guess we're going down the hill this way today, boys. Woo-wee. Oh, oil pan damage. Do you think? We've definitely seen better performance in the past. This is fine. I bet you we can make it all the way down like this. I mean, even just sitting here, CPU utilization, 86%. And then when I try to move stuff around, that's mostly the GPU. But you can definitely tell we are CPU bound. All right, let's try another map. FPS 0. Oh, good Lord. And I'm hitting the gas. Let's see. This is all just the CPU trying to load stuff in. GPU utilization is only at about 35%. This is all the CPU. Look, we're driving over nothing. Oh my gosh. Look at this. I can't even get the textures in. That's hilarious. I can't believe that. What a blast. Let's see if we can find another spot where we get really bad popping. That whole hillside's gone. It's missing. Oh boy. Oh, bam, a lamb, a ding dong. That's gonna do it for the Utah track on BeamNG. Well, once again, we've proven as expected, CPU bound, pretty hard. All right, I just started launching Black Myth Wukong here. Let's see how long that takes to pop up. But we must try it, right? You basically have to try Black Myth Wukong. It's compulsory at this point. Oh boy, here we go. Shader compilation in progress. I think we're gonna have to time lapse this. We've got 0.15%. It's gonna be a while, boys. And after well over half an hour of compiling shaders, we've finally made it to loading into the menu. We're just gonna run DLSS at 67% at 1080p medium. All right, and 6 minutes later, we're finally in the benchmark as expected. Our CPU is pegged at 100% once again. We're thoroughly bottlenecked, although I will say with DLSS running here, this does look better than the RX 580 we tried last time. All that hitching is definitely the CPU. Hitching. Once again, going back to that absolutely crippled cache model that they used for Excavator. It's horrible. We've got frame spikes up to 60 milliseconds, which is not acceptable. You really want to be below 25 if at all possible. But the fact that it's bouncing around between 25, 50, 60, I mean, it's all over the place. Just hitch after hitch. And that's the true downside to using this architecture. There's not much you can do about this. You can have all the RAM in the world, but it doesn't matter if the CPU can't fetch the instructions fast enough. All right, we're finally finished. Average FPS 30, minimum 7, lower fifth 24, used 4.7 gigabytes of VRAM. That was not a great showing for our CPU, which by the way is still pegged at 100%. It'll bounce between like 85 and 100 a few times, but I am pretty confident in this number, despite the fact that we can't see the actual megahertz and the temperature. Man, that thing stutters more than Porky Pig. All right, and that's gonna about do it for our Athlon X4 970. We've basically shown that for modern gaming, this CPU is not worth it. If you're going to enter into the AM4 ecosystem, just go straight for Ryzen. You can start out with a cheaper Ryzen 3 1200 or something like that. It'll cost you about $10 to $15 more. Or better yet, just go straight for a cheap 5000 series CPU. Something like a Ryzen 5 5500 or something will be great and a good place to start. These excavator CPUs did not age well, and they're just not worth it. These things are basically glorified e-waste. As always, if you have any requests or questions, be sure to put them down in the comments. I try to respond to everybody as quickly as I can. I've just kind of had a glut of comments recently, so I haven't been able to get back to everybody in such a timely manner. We've got many videos in the editing pipeline right now. I think there's 4 in total that I'm editing, and so I'm going to try to get a lot of content out over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Be sure to stay tuned for that, and in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.